Hello everybody, I'm Nick, and in this video we're going to take a look at every single C# 10 feature. I'm going to look at them individually and give you an example for each one of them and then give you my opinion on the matter. If you think that's interesting, stick around. If you like that type of content and you want to see more, make sure you subscribe and ring the notification bell to get alerted when I upload a new video. So let's go with the first one, which is global using statements. Now, this is a very interesting feature. So what you used to have beforehand, and by the way, this is perfectly valid C# 9 code using top level statements. So what you have is this using statement up here to effectively import the JSON serializer from the system.text.json. Now, this is such a common thing in my use case that I would have to add the using statement on every single one of my files wherever I'm using JSON serializer. So C# 10 brings a solution for that. Well, it brings a couple of solutions, but it's the same feature. So what you can do now is you can have a new item, and let's say it's a class. So I'm gonna call this global usings, and I can delete all that I don't need it. And then what I can do is take this and move it here and add the global modifier. And now every CS file in that CS proj will implicitly have this thing imported without me having to explicitly have it at the top. In fact, if I comment this out, as you can see, my code doesn't break, it still compiles. Now, this is only one half of this feature. The other half is that if I go and comment this out again, and as you can see, my code now doesn't compile because it doesn't recognize this JSON serializer, I can go in the CS proj and I can add an item group with using tags here. So I can have effectively the same thing. And as you can see, if I go now to the program, now it works. The reason why it works is because it recognizes that I have a global using statement here in my CS proj. And by the way, don't get confused by this condition. It just makes sure that it honors the implicit using statement setting here. But the idea is that now you have this here, and then there's a source generator behind the scenes who will take that and generate a file for you that has this global using statement for your code to use. This is exactly what's happening here. I think it's a cool feature, but I can also see how it can cause confusion, especially if things are in the CS proj and you don't exactly know where they're coming from. If you're just jumping from C# 9 to C# 10, it's not really explicit. So you'd have to look in here to be like, oh, yes, that's where this thing is being imported from. But overall, I think it's useful. Next, we have file scope namespaces. So previously, you can have a class like this where you have the namespace up here and then the class and then the getter and the setter and the property. And this can be the same for any file that has classes in it. And you can have different classes as well. Now, the reason why namespaces work like this is because in theory, you could have multiple namespaces, let's say 2 here. However, in my 6 years plus of writing C# professionally, I've never seen this feature. And I think that the C# devs also know that. So what they did is they say that, hey, you don't need this pointless level of nesting here and indentation. What we'll do instead is we will convert this into a file scope. So the whole statement is one line and it ends with a semicolon. And then you can have all the classes in here. And the way it works behind the scenes, it just assumes that everything in that file is in this namespace, which is how I've seen it anyway. So I really like this feature. I'm a huge advocate for less nesting in your code. So seeing this coming in Fusion is so amazing. I really love this feature. Next, we have constant interpolated strings. And this is another feature that I really like and I really hope C# had. So when I'm doing APIs, I like to have my API routes into a single static file and then nest into the different routing that I want to get. So my files would look something like this. Now, the problem I had before is because these things need to be constant for them to be usable in the attribute, let's say the HTTP GET or the route attribute, then you have to use a const, which means you cannot use string interpolation, can't return a constant in pre-C# 10 era. But now what you can do is you can take that and you can have string interpolation here. And this is totally fine. This is totally acceptable code. String interpolation can return now a const. Before it had to be static read only, which, you know, it was fine, but I couldn't use this in attributes. So it was a pain. Really glad this is a feature now. And since I did mention attributes and I don't have it anywhere else, I might as well mention that since this is every feature in C#, you can now have an attribute that has, let me show you, Nick attribute map, you go away and you also go away and you do this. Now you can have attributes that have generics in them. However, for that to work, you have to go and enable preview. So I think this is Lang version preview. So if I go back, this should now be acceptable code. Yes, it is. So if you wanted to have a type that is using that generic, then you can. The reason why this is added is because before you had to, well, not use that, and you had to go about having a constructor that was accepting a type, and you had to use that type then to do anything else in the future. So they just make it easier by adding generics, but this is only there if you enable preview features. Next, we have Lambda improvements, and boy, do I love these improvements. So previously in C#, you can have a function like this, which is a function that returns a string, and this is the syntax you would use. However, you could not have type inference here. So if I just say var here, this breaks, it doesn't work. However, if I go and bump up the version to 10 now, and I go back, this is totally acceptable code now. And this would return hello world. And why is this a big deal? Well, it significantly declutters your code when you're working with functions and actions. I no longer have to be type explicit everywhere. Now the compiler is smarter and understands exactly what's going on with the type. And in fact, it's so smart that you can now also do something like this. Before, you could not obviously have a lambda like this. And technically you still can't, because null can be any type. So it doesn't necessarily know what it should return. You know, if I change this into a function that returns a string, then, you know, this is fine. This works. However, if I do want to have var, but still want to have this short syntax, I can now add this. I can have the type. Let me change this into a nullable. So I can have the type right before the lambda, and this would understand what it needs to return. It's a very nice addition, way less clutter than what you'd have before. And I'm a big fan of features that make it way, way easier for you to work with functions. I heavily work with functions and actions, and I'm glad this is part of the language now. And these are just two of the examples. They really, really stepped up their game, and you need way less code now to work with them. By the way, as a side note, the reason why this is a feature in C# 10 is because the .NET 6 team wanted to not have to specify the type when you return the request from the Lambda. So there you have it. Now, next is extended property patterns. We actually talked about this feature in my pattern matching video, where I talked about, in the end, the C# 10 changes. But let me show you what it is. So we have a record here, right? Internal record, rectangle, and it has height, width, and can also have a nested rectangle inside of it. So that's the main idea. And then in the program.cs, you have something like this. You have the rectangle inside, and then you have the outer rectangle. Now, let's say I want to do something like if rectangle is, and use pattern matching, and I wanted to do something with the nested rectangle. So say rectangle, and then this height is more than 100. I would have to do something like this. Now, this means that for every level of nesting I have in my object, I would have to have this syntax where I have to have curly braces again, and like it can get really, really bloated, very, very messy. So what C# 10 allows you to do now is delete that and treat it as a property, exactly as it is. And now you can have a shorter version of the same property matching, which I'm glad they added as well. I don't make huge use of this specific feature, but it's good to see that you can now get the same amount of functionality for less code. Next, we have record structs. So here's a struct in C#. Records were also added in C# 9, and records look like this. Actually, we just saw how they look like, but you can have an internal record, I don't know, person, let's say string, first name, right? So this is a class that has a first name property. However, this is a mutable property, and there's a lot of things that are overridden internally to not only allow for immutability, but also check that if there's two different objects that have the same properties, when you do an equal check, the properties themselves are checked, not the references. So it's similar to data classes if you're familiar with like Python or Kotlin or these languages. Now, we did not have this functionality in structs in C# 9. This assumes that this is a class. However, now we can also have a record struct. It's a really cool feature, I think. And for those of you who might be thinking, okay, but what about record classes? Yes, they also added the record class, but this is the explicit version of it. If you don't have the class, it still thinks it's a class behind the scenes because the class came first and they have to keep backwards compatibility. But now you can have a record struct if so you want to. And on the topic of records, we can now seal the toString overridden method in records. So what do I mean? Because that's a bit of a too much, right? So you have an internal record rectangle, and then you have an internal record square that extends rectangle, and it sets just the side length. So because the side length is the same for every side in a square, we only allow the user to provide that. Now, if this rectangle didn't want the consuming record to actually override the toString, you can now say sealed here. So you can seal the toString method, which means that even if you extend this record, you cannot override the toString method. So this is mostly done for control and safety from the original record perspective. And it's probably, again, one of those more niche features that were added in the language, but it can certainly have some use. So it's nice that they added it. And back to structs, we now have structure type improvements. Let's see what those are. So this is what a struct looks like in C#. However, in C# 9, let me see where this project is. It is in C# 9. You cannot have just a parameterless constructor here that in which you just set like the height and the width to 0, right? Even if you do set all the values, you cannot do that. The other thing you could not do is that if I have a rectangle here and I want to create a new one out of the original one by using the with operator, I can say width and just some number. I cannot do this here. It just won't allow me. However, if I go back and I turn on C# 10, this is now acceptable code. And also I can have this parameterless constructor here. This is all acceptable. And it's nice that they allow us to have more control over those things because yes, the with operator is awesome and I use it quite a bit. And also, if this is a valid structure, why don't you allow me to have parameterless constructor there? It's very, very nice that they are opening it up. Now, next we can have assignment and declaration in the same deconstructor. Let's see what this is about. So this is, let me see if this is, this is C# 9 again. So what you have is a rectangle that has a deconstructor. And for those of you who don't know, a deconstructor allows us to deconstruct an object using their instructions. So the syntax looks like this. I have the height here and the width here, which is coming from this method, the deconstruct method, which is a void that returns two out parameters, the height first and the width second. And this is valid in C# 9. But then if I want to deconstruct into existingly assigned variables like this ones, I cannot have a mix of them. So I cannot do something like this because I cannot assign and declare in the same deconstructor. What C# 10 allows you to do now, let me just bump the version up, is just that I can now comment this out and I can have an assignment, which is this, and a declaration, which is this, in the same deconstructor, which is again maybe more of a niche use case, but I can totally see why this could be a thing. So I'm glad this is now a feature. Well, second to last, we have allow async method builder on methods. Now, I'll be completely honest with you. I have absolutely no idea what this attribute is doing. I've seen it before, and this is the attribute. By the way, the file you're watching right now is something I found on the web. It's a minimal example of working async method builder. However, I have no idea what it's doing. I'm going to link to it, by the way, in the description down below. I just want to touch on it because I'm going to show you what the change is. The change is that if you have, let's say, like an internal task, something async here, and I implement that, and then I return to completed task. And let me change that to async. So this looks like this when I don't need you. So in C# 9, you cannot have an async method builder attribute on an async task or async task of something. If I do bump it up to C# 10, now you can. This is valid code. However, I have no idea what this does, and I'm interested, so I'm going to take a look and research into what this is. And if there's a good story to tell there, I'm going to make a video about it. I don't know why this was added. I don't know how it works. I'm just going to show you that this is something. And if you are working with them, well, now you know why it makes sense. And by the way, if you know why, leave a comment down below because I'm interested. And now the last feature, which I don't have code for and I didn't actually want to talk about, but I'm just going to mention it, is the static abstract members in interfaces. I know that's a lot. Basically, the main motivation behind this is mathematical operations and generic algorithms. I've never come across the need to actually have something like this in the language. And that's why I don't know exactly how to explain it because I can't wrap my head around it. But the idea is that now interfaces can have static abstract members. And the way I've seen this in example, it's mainly to add this iaddable interface in other structures and then use it in algorithms to have a generic way of doing mathematical operations. That's why the 0 and the operator for plus are overridden. I'll be honest, I can't talk about it. I don't know enough about it to give you my opinion on this. So exactly the same as the previous one, this is a bit outside of the scope, but know that now in C# 10, you will be able to have static abstract in interfaces. However, this is a preview only feature, and it's a feature that also required a runtime change. So I think that's why it's in preview, because changes in the runtime are quite dangerous like this. Well, that's all I had for you for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Special thanks to my Patreons for making these videos possible. If you want to support me as well, you're going to find the link in the description down below. Leave a like if you like this video, subscribe for more content like this, and ring the bell as well. And I'll see you in the next video. Keep coding.